losses too. In college football, there have been dynasties, many dynasties, maybe none better or longer than perhaps Oklahoma in the late, 50s with Bud Wilkinson, and nobody's won 3 in a row. We know what Miami did or what Nebraska in the 90s did or others have done. Alabama in the last 10 or 12 years. Georgia's won back-to-back. What do you think considered a dynasty?
Oh, I think a dynasty in college football now. Well, maybe always, because nobody's won 3 in a row. So if you are either have won 2 in a row or you've won a couple of national championships and contended for a lot of others over a period of time. Tom Osborne had a dynasty. Bobby Bowden had a dynasty.
Bear Bryant.
Bear Bryant had a dynasty. Yeah. Saban has
Barry
a dynasty.
Switzer had one.
Barry Switzer had one. Newt Rockne, had one, right? That's going way back.
But I think it has to be longer than just 2 or 3 years.
No, but over.
Yeah.
I say you have to have. Kirby Smart's in one right now, right? So Kirby Smart's in a dynasty right now.
He's in the midst of what could be a dynasty.
Well, he's got 2 national championships, and he's been competing for others over the last 7, 8 years. So I would say inside most years.
That's why I said in the midst, because we don't know what the ending is.
Inside most years of a decade or so. Like, I don't think they last longer than, like, you can have maybe a 20-year dynasty before maybe things change.
Miami started in 83, ended after 2001.
Yeah, so 22 years. Not even 20, 18 years.
Florida State had probably what could have been in the day of now where you expand the playoffs, 5 or 6 others that they would have played for, but it was always the game if they lost to Miami or not, and they still won, 2? Under Bobby Bowden?
Yeah.
And then also under Jimbo Fisher. Oklahoma forever. A dynasty to me has to be elongated.
I think they're in it right now, and I'll tell you why. They went 13-2 in 2017, won the Rose Bowl, lost the national title. Went 11-3 in 2018, lost in the Sugar Bowl, okay? Then turn around, 2019, 12-2, won the Sugar Bowl. 2020, 8-2, won the Peach Bowl. That was COVID year. Yeah. 2021, 14-1, win the Orange Bowl, win the CFP. 2022, 15-0, win the Peach Bowl. So they're like in year 5 or 6 of this, because I think you start his first year they were 8-5, and they won the Liberty Bowl. So that's obviously not the kickstart of a dynasty necessarily, but it was, because since then, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Peach Bowl, Orange Bowl, Peach Bowl.
And
5-1 in those games.
What it was. It's now a part of the championship.
5-1 of those games, 2 national titles, 3 CFP appearances. So, I think it's not just that they won the 2 titles these last 2 years. It's before that, though, they were, in big bowl games or in 2017 playing for the title, just not winning it. So, I think that they're in year 6 or 7 of this thing, actually. It's just now you're starting to see the actual overall title start to come into play. And now that you've got a couple of those, and you'll be by far and away the favorite next year, by far and away. I know they got to replace Stetson Bennett, and they got some questions to answer, but their schedule, they're going to be in the playoff. I don't see unless a bomb hits or something. I don't want to even say that. You know what I mean? But I'm just trying to say, that's how extreme something would have to be to not envision them in the playoff next year because of the road that they have in front of them.
Yeah. And Kirby Smart, going back, if you think about it, he hasn't really been at Georgia for all too terribly long. He maybe walked into a situation that was a garden that was growing and kind of nice, but had some dead patches in it, and now he turned it from a garden into a cash crop because Mark Richt did a really good job at Georgia.
Yeah, he did.
Most schools would take Mark Richt's run at Georgia, but the problem is that Mark Richt was flying a little bit too, too close to the sun, but and his wings would get burned because there was always another school in the SEC who was that much better than him. They couldn't win the SEC title game. They just couldn't get over the hump. It was all this.
Georgia was known like Clemson was known for a long time, and others, or Florida State for a while, Nebraska for a while. They were always really close, but they couldn't put it over the top.
Couldn't get that. And then Kirby Smart has added to that, and now they are this juggernaut. I am curious to see what happens because it happened. One of those things is, what is a dynasty? How do you characterize Mac Brown's run at Texas? I mean,
That's not a dynasty.
Exactly. And his problem was in his
You know
own
what that
conference.
was? It's a hell of an era.
It was a great era, but they won one title.
Yeah,
in that era.
in his own conference, he had another team that was working on the same thing, which is often not the case. It is now in the SEC with now Saban and Smart. But
if Oklahoma had won any of those other championship games after they won in 2000, they would be a part of at least the discussion.
Yeah,
they were.
Had a bunch of opportunities.
Yeah, all
had
right,
a bunch of opportunities.
The Grueling Truth. I don't know the name of this site, but it's thegruelingtruth.com. College football dynasty. You don't have to agree with them. I mentioned Oklahoma. No team has ever dominated over 10 years like OU did. Bud Wilkinson. They won numerous national titles, 11 consecutive conference titles, and 3 national championships in that from 46 to 59. Notre Dame in the 40s under Newt Rockne. Miami, 85 to 92. We kind of discussed this because really they did fall back after that and then had some, I guess, wandering.
Well, they were on probation for a few years, and then Butch Davis came in and created the monster that was the 0-1 team.
Alabama in the 60s with Bear Bryant, Nebraska in the 90s, winning 3 out of 4, 60-3 over 5 years, losing in one of those of the 5 years. USC in the 60s and 70s under John Robinson and John McKay. Yeah, they had a great run. Ohio State for 25 years from 54 to 77. We'll keep going. Alabama had one. Texas went under Darrell Royal. Army, Florida State, Paul, 87 to 2001. Sure it is. Oklahoma from Barry Switzer's years and on. And, of course, the USC run with Leinart, Bush, Carroll, among others in that time. So there's just a story, an article.
Okay, over 20 years, LSU has won 3 titles, but none of those are dynastic runs because it's been under 3 different head coaches. Only one of which would have not have gotten fired, and that's Nick Saban. So,
well, and how do you have a dynasty if the team in your same division's winning like double the titles under the same guy too? You know, like I guess you could compete. I mean, the dynasty means like to me like above all else, and so that's, I mean, you got Kirby side by side with Saban now in Alabama. I mean, but Alabama's like, why are we even talking about Georgia's dynasty? Alabama's the one that's got the dynasty that's been rolling along. I mean, they're the ones that have had the near 15, 20 year dynasty at this point. So that's where it starts. That's what we need to go back and start there.
They won it in 2009 with Saban, and really even till today, they're still at an elite level.
Yes. Yeah. So they're a dynasty. Now, whether you want to argue whether or not it's starting to show cracks or something, like I'm not all on board that just yet, but, Kirby obviously does change the game because this isn't just, a coach popping up and, you win one at Auburn and then you don't win another one since then, or you win a couple at LSU at different time periods, but they're scattered. Alabama's has been year after year after year, and if they're not in it, they've been in the mix, and they're right outside the door, and they're knocking, like this year, saying we should have been in there, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, they're in the midst of it, but Georgia's definitely started one up, and it's not just because these last 2 national titles years, that's just cemented it, because Kirby's been really since he started, but since year 2 on, especially at a different level, playing in New Year's 6 type games or championship games. So I mean, it'll be cool to see where they take it, but go ahead and pencil them in as one of those 4 next year, barring something completely unexpected.
Some of you are getting into other sports. We could go on for hours with that. We're discussing the college football, yes, because at some point, someone's going to bring up, Paul, the Arkansas track and field team, right? And they were.
Texas Tech meat judging.
Yeah, exactly right. So there's again. So there you go. Just thanks for the question, TJ, and also I hope you enjoyed part of our conversation, and we read some of yours as well. Before Saban, 2 titles were a dynasty. No, they're again 95, 92 Nebraska lost to Florida State. 93, 94, 95 won it again in 97. In 93 they lost to. I mean that's 60-3 over 5 years is pretty hard to beat.
I do think that you have to when
now
you're
it's 3-60.
When you're over looking over dynasties and rules, the majority are the ones that are like 2 titles, and then you have to take out, like in the NFL. Bill Belichick had a dynasty, Nick Saban had a dynasty, but there's not any other comparable person in the rest of the sport. So they've out dynasties, but just because you haven't reached a level that only one person has doesn't mean that you're not still doing that. It's just
there's levels to it.
There's level they have reached a level. They're just on the boss level, and it's gonna be hard.
Some dynasties are 5 years. I think you got a minimum of 5 years minimum, but some are 10 years, some are 20. Some are 25, some are 30, and it just kind of depends.
And Georgia's in year, 5 or 6, you said, right now?
Based on that? I'd say, yeah. I mean, you can start at year 1 with Kirby winning the Liberty Bowl if you want to. But I think really beyond that, I think second year honest. I mean, I just don't think that kick-started necessarily, but you could say that it did because that was the first year, and it's led to everything that's happened since then. But I think when you really start looking at when they were making – a title run starting in year 2, playing for the national title, not winning it obviously, but making that appearance, winning the Rose Bowl, and then since then, like I said, it's been a couple Sugar Bowls, split those, a Peach Bowl, and then the last 2 years obviously have been as great as they could possibly have been outside of just the one blemish on the record last year, but still you were 14-1 in national champs and got your revenge. So yeah, I think he's been at it for good 6 years or so now, and no sign of slowing down anytime soon.
Baylor saw the beginning of the eliteness of Georgia in the Sugar Bowl a couple of years ago, right? But when they were just better.
I hate to tell you, that was 4 years ago.
That was 4 years ago. They just turned them around like a pretzel, and they were really impressive doing it. All right, when we come back, Big 12 basketball.